Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Brother Michael was a religious of the Marian Corps in the Philippines. I actually never heard of him until I got his death notice. First I knew of his existence, but he seemed to have been helping Father Frizzell for some time there at the seminary. And he was born a little bit, when he was young, he had a collapsed lung. So he always had a collapsed lung, I guess, and that was part of his health problems. But he did die at the seminary, so he didn't have to go to the hospital, and that's a great blessing to stay away from those hospitals and those places, and to die at home in your own bed. That's a good thing to do, and that's what he did do. He seemed to have some premonition of his death. He said goodbye to everybody that night before he went to bed. So maybe he knew he was going to die. I don't know. It was something very curious. But he was a religious, and a religious is someone who takes vows. Who takes the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. And a religious gets judged at judgment much stricter than a layman. The layman can do things and they'll be overlooked by God, but if a religious does them, they be sins or imperfections and can be called to account for them because of these vows he takes. So any attachments to things in the world for a religious because of his vow of poverty, which means he can own nothing and he can possess nothing in this world. This treasure has to be in heaven. He's supposed to be doing this treasure in heaven. So if you've got treasure in this world, then he's going to be punished for that in purgatory, at least, and called to account. So why did you have treasure in that world? I was your inheritance. I was your treasure. That's what God is the inheritance. God is the treasure of the religious. So he's got to be very careful about attaching not only having things, but attaching his heart to things. Keeping things that belong to the community in his own room or his own cell or something without permission. That's all not good and calling for judgment for them. So religious is held to a strict judgment. He's got a vow of chastity, which means he has to practice perfect purity, and any temptations have to be promptly rejected, and he's going to keep a strict guard on his eyes, and a strict guard on his heart, strict guard on his thoughts, so that he does not offend in any way against the virtue of purity. So his judgment on that matter was much stricter than a layman. Again, the layman has to be on guard on that, but not to the extent that a religious does. It was a promise to God that he would practice that virtue. And the virtue of obedience, that's the hardest one actually, the vow of obedience, because there you have to deny your own will. You can't do what you want to do. I think what God gave us all a free will, but the religious says, I'm not going to use my free will. I'm going to submit my will to my superior. I'm not going to do anything without permission, without instruction, without guidance. I'm going to try to follow. And the rule that the religious has is his guide, his essential guide, telling him what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to be doing something, well then that's what he's supposed to be doing. There was one saint, I forget his name now, and they were at recreation, they were out playing, and they said, what would you do if you heard that the world was going to end in 1 minute? And he said, well, I continue to play, because that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be playing now, I'm on recreation. I would go to the chapel and say my rosary or anything like that without permission. So that's what he said you have to do. So the rule is the main thing that the religious has to know. So he has to know his rule well and be determined to follow it in all things. And the religious house, there's usually a bell. And when the bell rings, the religious knows, well, now I'm supposed to go do this, now I'm supposed to go do that. So he doesn't have his own watch, perhaps, because he doesn't know the watch, because he's got to follow poverty. So he just has to go by what the bell does. So any relapses or any things in the way of obedience are also strictly judged by God. So religious has a strict judgment in his particular judgment, and he has to be very good. He has to be really perfect to go straight to heaven. And that's why the life of a religious is called the life of perfection, because he's taken away from many temptations of the world. He's given more time to spend with his soul, more time to spend with God in prayer and these things, and he's normally to do more penances for sins than laymen do. And they do this, so it is the life of perfection, and a religious is supposed to perfect himself in this life. And if he doesn't, well, then he has to go to purgatory and spend time in purgatory. So that's why we need to pray for him. We need to pray for Brother Michael, and we need to thank God for the graces he did give him, and we can also, I suppose, pray to him as well, because we need to pray for him and ask God to have mercy on his soul, and any punishment he still has to do. Well, his funeral mass and the Requiem Mass, that takes away a good part of that, so it's good to offer a Requiem Mass up for a deceased, and I'm sure they'll have several Requiem Masses offered for him after his funeral. I don't know when the funeral will be in the Philippines, but they'll have many Requiem Masses offered for him there. So let's pray for him and ask God to take him into heaven and give him that reward that he's merited by his life as a religious. I can't say I even know how old he is, or whether he's young or old, or how long he's been a brother, or anything like that. I don't know anything about the man, other than what little short blurb that Father Chazelle always says little short things. So a little short blurb about him from Father Chazelle. Anyway, let's just pray for him when this Mass is offered for him tonight. Eternal rest, grant unto him, O Lord.